Hi class, my name is Jasmine Sanchez. I'll be presenting an evaluation of policies on physical activity in the classroom. We are seeing a growing epidemic of obesity in children, so having them sitting down for prolonged periods of time is certainly not helping there. So through this research, I wanted to show that physical exercise is important for the cognitive development and functioning of children. And I also wanted to investigate different policies that are being used across the nation to implement more physical education and activities in the classroom. And I wanted to see if those policies are being implemented correctly and see how we can continue to move forward in the direction of increasing the availability of physical education for children. So, to start off with, I'd like to share a little bit of background on the epidemic of obesity in America. This is a self-reported obesity prevalence by U.S. state. And if we compare it to the 2014 map, which is available on the CDC or Center for Disease Control website, we can see that there has been an increase in self-reported obesity. Now, this is just for adults. And we can see in Texas, if we zoom there, that there is about 30 to 35% of obesity, self-reported obesity, which is high. Now, for children, these numbers are very similar and they are also increasing. So the thing to think about when it comes to children is that for the most part, the choices that they're making in their diet, in their exercise, are very much dictated by the adults in their lives. That's teachers, parents, policy creators, and governing boards. So we see that this increase in obesity is not just detrimental to their health, and increasing risks of diabetes, risks of heart attacks, but it is also a tax burden because now these children are having to need more medical aid, more money needs to go to sort of fix this problem that can be prevented. In other words, the funding that can be used to prevent childhood obesity is being used to treat childhood obesity. And that is why this research in creating more opportunities for exercise in the classroom is important. So what I'd like to show you next is just a glimpse of this research that we're beginning to see more and more of. So on the left, you'll see some information from the CDC that shows that the more active a child is, the better academic achievement they will have. Now, this particular informational shows that 60 minutes is the amount of activity that a child needs to have academic achievement. However, we are seeing more and more research that shows that even less amount of time will have a positive benefit on children's academic achievement and cognitive functioning and overall skills when it comes to those skills that are important in the classroom to help them be successful in the classroom and out of the classroom, arguably. On the right, we have a snippet of a program called Go Noodle, and it is one of quite a few programs that are coming out to help teachers and schools implement more physical activity in the classroom. This particular program, Go Noodle, something that I've used and I enjoy, and it has videos and activities that are both academic related and not academic related. And there are studies that assess the impact on academic performance, whether the exercise is cognitively engaging or academic, or whether it is not cognitively engaging, or so that would be something more like running in place or sit-ups. So the amount of cognitive engagement is what those are measuring, and GoNoodle offers both. So that's that. Now, some key terms that we find in these studies are acute physical activity, and that is referring mostly to the amount of physical activity. So acute is looking at short bouts, short periods versus longer periods of time, and it's looking at the benefits in just that short amount of time versus the long-term benefits. And when we talk about academic performance here, we'll be referring to cognitive function as measured in reading tests, spelling tests, math tests, and we're looking at things like memory, recall, response time. What we've seen in previous findings is that there is a positive association between physical exercise programs and academic performance. Now, much of the research that is out there is looking at the benefits for adults, and it shows that there is a positive association for adults. However, a lot of the research that is looking into children, which is not much, but the research that is out there also shows this positive association between physical exercise programs and academic performance. We can see that fitness can boost learning and memory in children, most in conditions in which initial learning is more challenging. In other words, when children are learning something new, something difficult, that is when fitness helps them the most. So I'm also investigating these policies, like I said, of physical education in schools. And we have found that they do meet their goals when they are properly implemented and supported. However, they do not often meet their goals when they are not, as you can imagine, properly funded or implemented or accounted for. So a little bit of background on the studies that I was looking at. This is just a little snippet of one. It shows a statistical improvement on reading comprehension. Hillman et al. Have found that acute bouts, so again that's short spurts of moderately intense physical exercise, facilitated cognitive performance and enhancing cognitive health and promoting effective functioning. So when Hillman was looking at moderately intense physical exercise, and this goes the same with a lot of other researchers, they were looking at heartbeats per minute. So the target heartbeat per minute was how they determined how intense that exercise was. And how they measured, again, cognitive performance was through various tests and looking at scans of the brains. So here we can see that there was a facilitation of cognitive performance with this acute bout. Again, that's short spurt. And when we look at the background of what there is in policy evaluation, these two studies stood out the most to me. We have the active school day policy on the left, which was in Boston. This policy was well funded by the state. It was well supported by the state in that it provided funds for training of teachers. It also assigned a campus leader at each school to ensure that the other teachers had what they needed to be successful, also to keep other teachers on track or other administrators who were running this program for these kids. There was external support, so somebody came in and helped out and answered questions and made sure that everything was going the way it had to. And they also had funding for equipment for specific activities. This was very much a sort of a planned implementation. So they had activities that they were doing. It was very purposeful in its implementation. And what Craddock et al. Saw was that there was indeed an increased amount of physical activity for children in the classroom and a reduced sedentary time. And these were measured by seeing how active the students were throughout the day. So it was during the whole span of their day, their activity was measured, and it did reach its goal or its purpose of getting more physical activity for those students. Now, the cost of the implementation for each student was a reasonable $14 for that whole year of implementation. So not very much at all. Now, on the right, we can contrast this to a different policy. This is from a report on school reform in Alabama. In this observational cross-sectional study, the implementation of state and school mandated physical education policies was conducted in 5 elementary schools in the Black Belt region of Alabama. And what it saw there was that these schools did not have the funding or training or support of the community or the city or the district. So there was a policy of 30 minutes per day for students to be physically active. And this 30 minutes per day turned into a physical education class or a PE class in which teachers would drop off their students and then pick them up after those 30 minutes. Now, what this study saw was that oftentimes the person who was teaching this physical education class either was not certified to teach physical education, was not knowledgeable on it, or other times teachers would drop off the kids late or pick them up late, and so that affected the amount of time that they actually had in this PE class. What this study also showed was that the implementation of PE was really not in compliance. So on paper it looked like it was happening, there was a schedule for it, but in reality it was not, and there were different factors for it, like the ones I just mentioned, as well as the pressure to spend more time in the classroom to study for state tests and such things. So what we see in this study is the implementation of PE as the only opportunity for physical activity in a school day does not provide adequate amounts of physical activity. It is too easy to cut those minutes down, and so the students do not end up getting the required amount of time. Now, the purpose, again, was to evaluate the effects of acute physical activity in the classroom and academic performance in children, and investigate the compliance with state and district mandated physical activity intervention in the Nacogdoches Independent School District elementary schools. And this is my proposed studies for this project. So my first study, or both studies rather, will represent the diversity of sociocultural characteristics of Nacogdoches, Texas, and it will be pulled from 6 elementary schools belonging to the Nacogdoches Independent School District. For exercise effect studies, all students participate in the acute exercise and control intervention, and there will be a random assignment to a classroom intervention. For the implementation investigation, physical activity will be monitored for 5 days using a pedometer. My intervention in the first study is designed to achieve moderate to rigorous activity, and we're reaching a target heart rate of 150 beats per minute. There will be a controlled environment as well, where students are instructed to engage in quiet activities, and my outcome or dependent variable is memory, planning, and problem solving. The significance of these studies are that acute physical activity has been shown to increase cognitive performance in adults with some of the same suggesting benefits in children. More so, the significance is that there is an improved academic performance through physical activity, and so it justifies the implementation of aerobic-based activity in the classroom and gives grounds to the promotion of better policies and better programs to serve children with. This concludes the end of my study, and this concludes the end of my proposition for further studies. I appreciate your time, I appreciate your consideration, and may you be well. Thank you.